So my name is Christian. I'm the second affirmative constructive speaker. So basically I would like to reiterate what Kenny said, was that these high-speed rails are rarely even profitable. There's only two that actually work. A World Bank report states that that's certainly what happened in Japan, where only a single bullet train line between Japan and Osaka breaks even. It's what happened in France, where only the Paris-Lyon line is in the black. Taiwan tried a privately financed system, but ended up losing so much money that the government had to bail it out in 2009. So why are we building them, he said? Well, he said that because they're environmental, and that they're environmentally beneficial, and that they're going to get cars and airlines off the roads and out of the sky, I suppose. I'd like to first respond to his environment claims. They're not nearly as environmentally friendly as stated. So what they're saying is that by having this high-speed rail, we're going to be able to reduce California's CO2 emissions and the effects that they've caused. The claims about the high-speed rail's environmental benefits have been greatly overstated. California high-speed rail will do little to reduce CO2 emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. Based upon the California Air Resources Board projections, the high-speed rail will ultimately remove CO2 emissions equaling only to 1.5% of the current state objective. This is a small fraction of the California high-speed rail's exaggerated claims of almost 50% of the state's objective. It's going to cost more to reduce our current levels of CO2. They say that, according to the Reason Foundation, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has indicated that for between $20 and $50 per ton, we can reduce a ton of greenhouse gases. A deep reversal of CO2 concentrations can be achieved by 2030 and 2050 respectively. However, a McKinsey report indicates that a substantial CO2 emission reductions can only be achieved in the United States for far more than $50 per ton. Here it says the cost per ton of CO2 emission removal by the high-speed rail is far higher. It's going to cost anywhere from 39 to 201 times the $50 that they state. And also, it's not going to reduce the amount of oil that we're using. Dr. Anthony Pearl of Simon Fraser University states that over 2/3 of the world's electricity comes from fossil fuels. So until, or even unless, power stations are weaned off of fossil fuels, electric trains will still have a significant climate impact. And our high-speed rail is going to be 100% electric, but there you go, electric trains are using 2/3 of electric power is generated by fossil fuels. There are also numerous environmental concerns, such as in the Berkeley report, noise of the train going by is going to be greater than 90 decibels at high speeds, and it's going to be a visual intrusion of elevated structures, that is, sound walls in urban areas. It's going to have a large impact on farming, severance and access restrictions. It's going to impact parks and recreational areas. It's going to have an adverse noise effects on wildlife, adverse effects on endangered and threatened species from the noise barriers and roadkill, and an adverse impact on the number of parks and wildlife refuges is anywhere from 140 to 180 open parks and wildlife spaces. So you can see that environmentally it's not nearly as beneficial as our opponents have stated. Here I have a little bit more data here. And he said we're going to be getting cars off the road and planes out of the sky. Statistically, the correlation between changes in urban densities and changes in per capita driving is very low. And to the extent that there is a correlation, a doubling of urban densities reduces per capita driving by only 3.4%. Nor do so-called transit-oriented developments, high-density mixed-use developments near transit stations significantly reduce driving. To the extent that people living in these developments drive less than others, it is because those people want to drive less than others, not because they are forced to. They decide to live near the transit line. After the market has been saturated though, people living in such developments continue to drive as much as other people. And people aren't going to use the high-speed rail. Reliable, diverse, and nimble transit system that many advocates envision surrounding high-speed rail systems does not exist in most cities today, limiting the appeal of trains. To compensate for these disadvantages, taxpayers will have to steeply subsidize the train ticket prices for the business travelers and tourists that are most likely to use them. Ultimately, high-speed rail impacts on American travel patterns and employment productivity are going to be negligible, and the actual job creating potential for high-speed rail is much more modest than the proponents admit. And I would also like to say that, introduce a new issue that it's nowhere near being built, and it's better just to cut it now before we waste too much money. All these eminent domain roadblocks are causing a major hiccup in the building. There are still many things that physically prevent the rail from being built. Aside from a lack of funds, the High-Speed Rail Authority has yet to attain the land necessary for building the rail lines. They will likely have to acquire the land by eminent domain. 305 is the number of eminent domain actions for the high-speed rail line taken by the Public Works Board since December of 2013, many of which have failed. You all know what eminent domain is. It's the legal process by which a government agency can go to court to acquire property. And there's still a long ways to go in the eminent domain process. The authority says it still needs to speed up their process because they've only attained 100 of the 500 land parcels needed for the rail stations and rails and stations to be purchased. As of mid-2015, there were still 425 acres of land the High-Speed Rail Authority had yet to acquire by eminent domain in the Fresno Valley alone, according to the Fresno Bee. And the rail authority is making very slow progress with buying the land. In most cases, landowners are being offered far lower than what their land is worth. They claim that their offers are not fair nor reasonable. In some cases, the authority has been working with homeowners for years now to reach a settlement. And this is all in the Central Valley. They haven't even gotten to the far more populated areas of the San Francisco Bay or the LA Basin. They're going to be coming into far more roadblocks there. And I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you.